Hello and welcome. So for the first part of this video, I'll quickly go over what I've leveled up so I could get it out of the way. So I've been doing some goldsmithing, well, a decent amount of goldsmithing. It's not the best XP per hour, but it's just nice and cheap. Then as part of my dailies, I have been doing the Guild Honor games, and I've gained over 1.2 mil XP of doing this alone. And I went from, at the beginning of the series, I was level 75, now I'm level 82. And this is the only agility training I've done. So last week they updated the God Wars dungeon graphically, and while doing so, they've added drops to each of the bosses. The graphics, they look different. I really didn't care much for them. But on my Comcape account, I made 50 mil pretty easy, so I thought, why not just try it on my Nills account? Maybe if I get lucky, this would really help me along. So I only did about 2 hours on my Comcape account, and then I went on my Nills account and got my KC geared up. And so I decided to go to Sarah and just leech the minions. Leech as in kill the minions and not the boss. And this was when the best method for farming drops were to walk the boss while killing the minions, which seemed like a silly thing, but that's kind of what the drop rate was. It was better off the minions and not the boss. So I'm going to Sarah solo because I wanted this series to be sort of a guideline for people who wanted to make money. And I'll go back on this topic really quick because if you look here, right when I walk in, I get the Sarah notes. It's called Zeliana note. And that was pretty funny because I'm not with these guys. I'm not in the same friends chat. And I guess I don't know. I heard that if you just camp outside, you can actually have a chance to get the notes without actually having to kill the boss. But yeah, it's something silly. So now back on topic that I mentioned like 30 seconds earlier. I'm doing the series solo, but I can't get help from people that I meet while I'm doing PVM. So I'm able to use like the Runescape forums to find teams that I want to do PVM. And if I meet somebody, I could add them. But of course, I'm not gonna like cheat and get my friends with max gear to meet me in game so that I can add them, and then that they could carry me along the series. I'm not gonna do that. Although without max gear, I find that I prefer solo PVM much more than team PVM because team PVM is like example God Wars where you need more than one person to kill them efficiently. But in team PVM, there are just so many max players with chaotics now, turmoil, and all that stuff. Before it was fun when only a few people had it. It wasn't too bad. But now, if you want to do God Wars, you either really need a really large team, which has really bad splits, or max gear, which is why it's so hard to start making money now. Which again is why I prefer solo PVM such as DK, Barrows, Fight Kiln is really good money. So I stayed at Sarah for a good 2 to 3 hours, and a thing I noticed is with the gear I have, a whip, super pot, and piety, I have terrible DPS. Compared to the people in that team, one of them alone can out hit a minion from me with just a few hits. While it takes me like a good 10 seconds before I even do half the HP of the monster. But I find that if you're gonna leech, just try not to be a bother to them. Be nice to whoever is there. It doesn't matter, like, it doesn't always work, but sometimes it does. If you're nice to them, maybe they'll leave you a minion, which happened half the time. Then the other half, they were just messing around and just getting the minion over me. So I'm just gonna skip to the end of the trip because after 100 KC, I still got nothing. Sad to say, making nothing in 2 to 3 hours at Sarah is pretty depressing. And then they changed it so that the drop rate from killing the boss is actually better than killing the minions. So now, if I wanted to go to Sarah, I would have to go with a team, and which most likely I will not get accepted with my kind of gear setup. Like I only have a whip, I only have piety, and I have super pots. Now, most teams that accept that, or that's what they're using, they'll probably get crashed, and the trip would only last about like an hour. So I don't actually plan to come back to Sarah for a while until like maybe if I get turmoil or a chaotic first. So yeah, 2 to 3 hours with no drop. That was a complete waste of time, but it would have been great if I actually got a drop. And that's really what boss hunting is. You camp a boss, hope for a drop, and that drop will count for most of the money you would have made. But if you don't get a drop, you really kind of just wasted your time. And the only time it's worth it is if you get a drop. Because without the drops, you're hardly making any money. Well, this depends on which boss you do, because some bosses, the normal drops, they actually are worth something like next. But if you count like other bosses like maybe Zami, the basic drops, they're they're really terrible. They're not worth much like the Eddie arrows. Although the Eddie arrows, you could probably make a decent amount of money from them. So then I went to the Grand Exchange after the trip. I bought a Blessed Spirit Shield and an Armadyl Coif. And I bought an Armadyl Coif for armor because I didn't have an armor item. I could have gotten the armor pendant, but then that's one space I lose because I would have to bring amulet switch when I'm done with KC. And yeah, so I just bought the Coif. It costed about a mil, but I had some money to spend. So currently I have a setup for about 2 hour trip. And of course, if you ever go PVM, take a picture of your gear so you don't forget it. And I think I have a folder of all the gear I have so far, but like a lot of it's been changed around. Some aren't even updated. So in the last episode, I got Dreadnips, which are fantastic. They'll most likely do more damage than I can since I'm only like Ruby Bolts and Eagle Eye versus Arma. And Arma, like, I would not hit, even with my range pots. So I have multiple fruit bat pouches because they're really good for healing between kills, but it's a lot of clicking. Although it only requires 69 summoning, opposed to like Elemental Titan is at 79, Unicorn is at 88. So this is really the only other good familiar. If I brought just all brews and restores, I would probably just lose a ton of money because using brews and restores, you will last there for a bit, but then you're unless you get a drop, you're probably just gonna break even or even lose money from the trip. So the reason I'm going to Arma is because a friend of mine told me that Arma wasn't really crowded and that it's a lot easier to find worlds compared to Bandos, Zami, and Sarah. So I just wanted to get a few God Wars kills in so that I could maybe get a chance at a drop because I knew that Bandos, Zami, Sarah, it's just going to be crowded. There's going to be people in each world trying to find a world, and honestly, it's just going to all be full. So it's just going to end up with people crashing each other just because there is a limit on how many worlds there are. So while getting KC, I got a frozen key piece of armor from the minion. For the first few seconds, I had no idea what the hell it was, but then I remember it was for next for the key, and I'm surprised I haven't actually gotten any of the other key pieces from the other factions. So after getting KC, we went in, and Arma looks really different now. Arma now only stands rather than fly, even when attacking, and just throws gusts of winds at you. And now Armado looks much more humanoid than before. Before it was like a bird. Now it's you can actually see the skeleton. But anyway, the minions still fly. But so I'm at Arma with a person I met. We decided to go out and try a duo in World 2. And it being World 2, it's a free-for-all world. So we just did free-for-all split, where we split the big drops and not the little drops. But he has overload, so I only got like 3 kills out of like the 3 hours we were there. And this is probably the few time I've actually been to Arma before. Arma was really good when the hilt was actually worth something. Now it's not worth much. And the thing I don't understand is why do people bring tortoises of like brews and restores there when I'm pretty sure eventually you're gonna cut down to a healing familiar and you're able to just survive off of that. Like the entire 2 hours there, I was able to survive with just a fruit bat. Although with Arma, like where she or he, I don't know, where Arma just pushes you back with the gusts of wind, it's really annoying when you're trying to pick up papayas and having such a full inventory of like brews, restores. Brews are just in case, and prayer pots. I really had no space to pick up fruits, so a lot of the time I was spamming my fruit bat and just trying to eat to stay alive, and that was a lot of clicking. Like, I really just want to get like either a elemental titan or a unicorn before I come back, or no, I'll come back like some. I just gotta like the clicking. It's just too much. Anyway, besides the intense clicking from the fruit bat, I think I prefer the fruit bat because it has the potential to heal a lot more. Whereas with the elemental titan, you're kind of stuck with a set amount of heals for 2 minutes. And also the knife already being in the tool belt, it kind of helps for that little bit more healing from cutting pineapples. But again, big pain trying to pick up tiny papayas off the ground when you have a terrible mouse and Armor keeps pushing you back with his or her gusts of wind. Gust. Anyway, so at the end of the trip, I don't know how many kills we were there for, since my duo partner got most of the kills. And we were there for a good 2 to 3 hours. We didn't get anything for the entire trip though. And I think Arma has one of the worst basic drops ever. Like, it's just so depressing to see a rune crossbow, mine rune drops, or even a black D high bunny when it takes much more longer to kill armor than the other kind of bosses there are in God Wars. Except next. So after that trip of Arma, I noticed that I was running low on dread so I set aside like an hour or two to get more dread. And even though I got a lot, it's just not going to be enough. I know eventually I'll have to go back no matter how many dread I have. I'll eventually just use them all up. So after that Armator trip, next day, the guy I dueled with earlier invited me to a four-man CS team, so I thought, why not? Hopefully we'll get something this time. So at this point, most of the items were mostly below like grand exchange value, so coin share seemed the better way to go. So I'm just since it's coin share, it's kind of hard to read the text because God Wars is now blue and the thing is red. I don't know if you can read it. Good. Anyway, so it started out as a four-man CS team, and we were there for like we were formatting for a good 30 minutes. Then yeah, people had to go. They ran out of supplies. One guy had a tortoise, and I still don't. Yeah, I don't understand why people would bring brews and restores when you can just survive off of a healing familiar. So at this point at the trip, I was at the updated God Wars for like 5 to 7 hours with no drop. I paid very little money, so I'm not doing so well. I was hoping to get a drop so that I could prove that updates are where you have a lot of potential to make money. But I think the main issue that hindered my progress for this PVM update was the gear I have access to. With updates, it's always going to be packed on the first day. People are going to be fighting over resources if it isn't instance. And since nowadays there are so many 138 who train their skills earlier rather than later, they'll have the advantage when it comes to updates, which is discouraging for lower level players who don't have like maxed out accounts at the time of the update, like my Nills account. So for this God Wars update, I really didn't make any money because, well, I don't have Overload, Turmoil, or the gear required to compete with the other players, like the max players who already have that kind of stuff. So I'll be working towards that kind of gear for now. Hopefully by the time of the next God Wars update or PVM update like the Calify King coming up, hopefully by then I'll be able to have enough gear to be able to compete with other players. So at around now, I have about a 60 mil bank. I keep the bank value that I have in the description of the video to keep track of how far I've gone. Sometimes I'll do a bank value at the end, depending maybe if it's like a milestone or something. So I can almost afford full bandos, which can aid me if I ever go to God Wars or even do Slayer. And with all PVM updates, when they're announced, PVM items go up in price till just before the update. Items such as PVM armor, weapons, there's potions, supplies. Now, of course, this doesn't apply to all updates, but it seemed to happen quite often. And since now it's been a while since that PVM update, the God Wars dungeon, the graphical one, and the price of the items are going back down. For example, if you look at the graph for bandos, it's going down a bit. So I'll be purchasing a set soon when I get enough, like just a bit more cash. I'm waiting for a bit more cash because so that I still have money to work with. So if you look at my inventory, you'll see I have a Dominion marker. It's the Dominion Marker 3. I got it from the Dominion Tower. And I'm not sure why I brought it in the first place. Originally, I thought it would be a good replacement than bringing like multiple ranging pots since it boosts my stats by 8 every, I don't know, 15, 30 seconds or so. But midway through the trip, I kind of realized that it only boosts my stats by 8 if I'm at my base stat or lower. So if I'm already potted, it's not going to keep it potted. It's just going to wait till it goes all the way down to my base stat, then boost it up, which isn't really good. It would have been better if I brought my previous setup where I brought ranging pots, but this could still be very useful for Corp where your mage is constantly like lowered, especially if you brew. And the trip was almost a complete bust, except we got actual split. We got a 5.6 mil Armadillo boot split, which was nice. And yeah, that's the only split in that 7 hours I was at God Wars. So 5 mil in only 7 hours, that's not really good. I much prefer just solo PVM. Like DKs, that's easily 1.3 mil per hour. So if I just did DKs, that would have been much better. But of course, this is God Wars. It's mostly based on luck. So I'm just gonna tell you now that that's the only split I got. The only profit I made was at 5.6 mil off the Armadillo boots. So after a disappointing trip, I mean, like 5.6 mil isn't bad, but the time spent, like the 7 hours, was kind of discouraging. So a few episodes back, I asked if I should get a rapier, like my first chaotic, at either a 50 mil or 100 mil milestone, like for my bank value. And I didn't mention it, but I decided to go for a 100 mil milestone before I actually get my first chaotic. So the first 50 mil I did was mostly from Dagannoth Kings and Barrows Brothers. So that should show that it's not hard to make money, it just takes time. The only hard part is actually spending the time and having the patience to get a drop from the boss. The method is the same no matter if you have like level 70 stats or not. You're still going to be doing, it's probably like the same bosses anyway. And after reading a few comments, some people have been asking why I didn't start on a level 3 account. And if I were to start on a level 3 account, the first 100 episodes of Nills to Bills would just be me doing Slayer. And Slayer makes some money, but not a lot. And I realized at low level combat like 40s, 60s, there really isn't any good money making method you could get through PVM content. And that's because it's not until you get higher combat stats that it gets better. And yeah, it wouldn't make sense anyway if you were able to do high level PVM content at like level 3. So this following part I really didn't want to do. I wanted I had set this mindset to myself that I will not get my first chaotic until I get at least 100 mil bank. So I kind of wanted to get 100 mil before like just to show that you can make 100 mil through conventional methods such as DKs, barrows, stuff like that. Things that would be easy to do. But because I really wanted to get my first chaotic because God Wars had come out and I wasn't ready for it. I didn't have the gear for it, and like I had a whip, and whips are really terrible compared to what people can do nowadays with chaotics, turmoil, and overload. So I went and did the fight kill multiple times just because I wanted to get to that 100 mil goal and then get a chaotic. So yeah, I did the fight kill, and like I'm just gonna say, the fight kill. The only difference from this than doing Dagannoth Kings is the fight kill is pretty much like I know how to do it. It's better money than Dagannoth Kings, but I didn't want the whole series to just be me doing the fight kill over and over again. I wanted to actually go boss hunting. That's actually some fun. Like the fight kill, it's kind of boring because you do the same thing over and over and over again. There's nothing new, nothing changes unless like I did die a few times. But that's kind of because Jads are kind of boring to do after a while. And sadly, I died to like a 700 from a mage from Jad. Even in Ganodermic, I died. But anyway, so the difference between Fight Kiln and the Dagannoth Kings is 1.3, 1.5 mil per hour ish. And that's pretty consistent because the drop rate isn't that bad on Rex. But with the fight kiln, even though it takes me, like, I could do the fight kiln in 40 minutes if I were on my main, but I'm not. But on my Nills to Bills account, it takes me about 2 hours to do one fight kiln for the Onyx. But even though it takes a whole 2 hours, that's 5 mil. That's a 5 mil Onyx in 2 hours. So that's 2.5 mil per hour. That's a lot faster. That's like almost 2 times faster than what I would have made from doing Dagannoth Kings. And that's what I really like about the fight kill. It's like it's consistent money making method as long as you get to the end and kill it. And it's nothing new. There's nothing you need to know. It's pretty simple and it's a safe mini game. So if you die, you only lose whatever supplies you used during the trip and you just spawn right back outside. Although it's a funny thing that like a thing I noticed that when you go into the fight kill and then go back out, it refreshes all your stats as well as your spec bars. So I don't know why people are going to the duel arena to get to die there, or even clan wars to die there so that they get their spec back. When they can go to the fight kill, go in, come out. Well, when you go in, you gotta press the space bar to go through the chat, or it won't work because you actually have to go in the fight kill and then go back out, so it resets your stats. So yeah, that's a quick way to refresh your spec if you ever wanted to. Which was, yeah, I'm just surprised that people are still doing the Clan Wars Duel Arena thing. So, as always, you can check my A-log if you want to see if I really did all this stuff that I showed in this episode. Of course, it may contain some spoilers if for the next episode, depending on when you actually look at it. Although, if you should always be cautious of what links you click on, So you can always search my RSN molecule space X2 on the official Runescape site to get my A-log information. But anyway, besides that usual stuff, now that God Wars have been updated, I can start at a legitimate drop log for the drop ratios, because since they added new drops, it kind of kills any logs that I had before. But I probably won't start the drop log until I get like overload, turmoil, and gear I need eventually for God Wars. Although that might be a while, since I should set aside some time to make more money for more episodes, because lately I haven't had that much time to do PVM stuff. I believe I did about 8 kilns. That took about 18 hours to do, counting like the 2 times I died. And from those 8 kilns, I sold them in the GE for 40 mil instantly. And that was nearly half my bank in that like in that 18 hours. I made nearly half my bank from that. So now in my inventory, I have most of my bank in here. There are a few stuff in my bank that I'm missing, like the Ganodermic I used for the fight kiln. It's half degraded. But looking at my risk wealth, I now have 100 mil bank. And the reason I wanted to get 100 mil is because I wanted to buy a rapier. And I had the points for rapier for quite a while, actually. If you look at my A-log, I had 80 plus engineering for nearly a month. I'm pretty sure I didn't even mention it in the previous episode. It's because in the episode I actually did engineering, it got some negative feedback where I was being a little, I was being, yeah, I was just being negative about like, if you do engineering with people who do not know what they're doing, it's just going to be an awful time. And there really isn't that much guides out there, so that didn't really help it. So now I can buy my rapier, but I'm not sure how you guys would feel about this, since half my bank, like the 40 mil, was made by doing the fight kiln. But this time, the time spent doing the fight kiln could have been spent doing the Dagannoth Kings, and I would have just made a tad less. So I'm curious how you guys would feel about that. But either way, I finally got 100 mil bank on my Nills to build series. I remember the first time I made 100 mil on my first account. It was It was a really big achievement for me, because well, this was back when there were no free trades. So if you actually had 100 mil bank, that meant something. Now, if you got like a bill or something, it's like maybe they scammed it, lured it, that you host for it. There's no achievement to having that much money anymore. But anyway, besides all that, I finally got 100 mil bank. I got my first chaotic, and I want to know how you guys think about this. How I made, like, should I have done the killing for money, or like, does that even count for the series? Since not everybody can do it, even though, well, most of it is pretty simple to do, but it really depends on the person. But yeah, besides all that, thank you very much for watching, and have a nice day.